So I'm going to be honest, when I saw this card I kinda freaked out. Hi and welcome to something of a deck tech video and a card review at the same time. So this is Necrodominance, a newly leaked Magic the Gathering card that we're going to see eventually. For now this is the best quality picture we currently have of it. Now this is 3 black. And legendary enchantment, skip your draw step. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay any amount of life. If you do draw that many cards, your maximum hand size is 5. If a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. This is a balanced Necropotence. We kinda should emphasize that it's a weaker version of Necropotence. You can activate Necropotence anytime, your hand size is not decreased, and you only exile cards whenever they are discarded, and you don't actually draw the cards, you're putting them directly into your hand. So anti-card draw stacks effects won't affect the original Necropotence, but it is affecting this thing. However, there's one really important thing to mention here, and that is, it's legendary. And now you all know exactly what I'm going to talk about for the rest of this video, and that is Sisay Necropotence! Which is my favorite commander inside the entire format, so yeah, I kinda freaked out when I saw this card. Because now you can activate Sisay and tutor for Necrodominance. That is similar to how Sur have kind of operated. Now, Necropotence is actually showing a pretty good result. So I calculate the data from various tournaments, looking how specific cards function. And I'm currently up to 18,833 decks in my total sample size, and I have 40 decks that are including all of these 3 cards here, while excluding Adnos, Bola Citadel and Peer into the Abyss, and those 40 tournament entries have received an average win rate of 23.53. And there are various different combinations that we can look at that are generating various different values. Specifically this one being the best one. Now we're not excluding ad nauseam here, so there's a chance that some of these decks have been playing ad nauseam. For example, in this picture you're seeing Bonaparte Wind, Enlightened Tutor, Final Fortune, Necropotence and Rhystic Study. Enlightened Tutor here being both capable of finding Rhystic Study and Necropotence. And we're excluding Braids and Talion the Kindly Lord here. And we have 307 decks that have done this combination, and they have received an average win rate of 26.83. Like in general, Necropotence is doing a kinda decent job in general. And I have been really interested in putting a Necropotence combo package inside the Sisay Necropotence deck, because that could make her less commander dependent. An easy way of interacting with Sisay is basically to make sure that the commander dies. You have Opposition Agent, you have Source to Plowshare, Draenei Magistrate, etc. that will make this commander struggle. And it could be good to have a other combo that you can easily go for. And Necropotence is a good option for a specific reason. You see, Sisay can tutor for Teferi Time Reveler, and this is a planeswalker that is basically a Grand Abolisher, making it impossible for your opponents to interact with you. So each opponent can't cast spells only any time they could cast as sorcery, but +1 until your next turn you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. This is helping you with that instant speed attempt that you need to be able to win through Necropotence. But there's another really big thing. Ad nauseam isn't really a good option for Sisay because a lot of her CMC cost on a lot of her mid-range cards are quite expensive. You have Thalion, you have a lot of free CMC spells, Emil is 4, Derevi is free, Esika is free. There's a lot of other really popular, super expensive CMC cards that would make ad nauseam a tricky build. But Necropotence will work through that very efficiently, because you don't really care about the CMC cost of cards, you just pay 1 life instead. Now the 2 supplement cards you really have to play when you're playing Necropotence, and I've actually looked at statistics regarding this. For example, here we have Necropotence and Bonaparte Wind, excluding Dockside Extortionist and excluding Final Fortune. We're basically excluding red entirely here. Now we have 241 decks that have done this. This is basically Demir color identities, and they are receiving an average win rate of 18.61. So without Final Fortune, you're kinda lacking. Because having more density, having more variations is just increasing the consistency and the chance that this combo is going to work out. So when you activate Necropotence, you're going to draw an enormous amount of cards, and usually you have to discard the hand size, and in this new updated Necrodominance case down to 5, while in Necropotence case down to 7. But you also have to pass turn. Final Fortune lets you take an extra turn after this one, so you don't have to pass the turn cycle. You can sculpt the perfect 7 or the perfect 5, and go to your next turn and win with those 5 cards. Or Born Upon a Wind, that lets you basically play the entire hand, so to say. And you more or less win in instant speed. Taking us back to that Teferi that Sisay finds and Necropotence potential synergy. For example, you could activate Teferi, +1, cast Necropotence, pay an enormous amount of life. You don't find Born Upon the Wind or the Final Fortune, but let's say you find a Demonic Tutor. You can cast the Demonic Tutor in instant speed thanks to Teferi, find Born Upon the Wind, and from that point win the match. But there is another really worthy mention, and that is Crop Rotation, that can find Emergency Zone. Now, I've actually looked at including Crop Rotation and Emergency Zone together with Necropotence, and together with Final Fortune and Born Upon a Wind as well, and it's not that amazing. However, Crop Rotation is still pretty amazing inside this deck, because you can find Gaia's Cradle. The reason why Gaia's Cradle is absolutely an amazing card and auto-include for CC and something of a must-have is because of Agatha Soul's Cauldron, and in my personal case, as well, Orochi Leaf Collar. I think I might be the only CC player that still plays Orochi Leaf Collar, but I naturally enjoy drawing into it. You usually activate CC and find Agatha Soul's Cauldron, but well, if you have Agatha Soul's Cauldron, you can just cast it for 2. Or if you have an Orochi Leaf Collar, you don't need to activate Sisay to find it, you just cast it instead. Now, with Gaia's Cradle and Sisay, and one of these 2 cards, you can tap Gaia's Cradle, and if you have 5 creatures or more, you get an Sisay activation. That usually leads into Darevi, Imperial Tactician, that yet lets you untap Gaia's Cradle to activate it again and find Emil, find Flicker Darevi, which will untap Cradle, and you go infinite mana. You usually find Gaia's Cradle with Sisay, but if you're including Crop Rotation, you can actually just find Gaia's Cradle as well in instant speed and surprise your opponents. Sisay being able to win the game in instant speed is quite good. If you want a good and simple example of how Sisay can win in instant speed, once you've found Emil the Blessed, you have infinite mana with Darevi or together with Gaia's Cradle, or if you have Dockside Extortionist and Emil the Blessed together, you have infinite mana, you activate Sisay and you find Kinnan. If you don't have Dockside, you activate Kinnan infinitely until you find a Dockside Extortionist, and you activate Kinnan infinitely until you have Orcish Bowmaster. Then, with Emil the Blessed, infinite mana, and Orcish Bowmaster, you have infinite damage. So now Crop Rotation is both serving you in finding Gaia's Cradle, but also in finding Emergency Zone if you're suddenly going for the Necropotence. We're making different cards overlap and work together, combining 2 different combo concepts together a little bit into one. I guess I should mention Teferi, Mage of something, I can't really pronounce that last part, but I personally don't play this one, I don't personally like this one, but I've noticed that a lot of Sisay players are actually playing this Teferi, so I'm mentioning it that the population and the popularity vote is starting to run this thing. So it's 3 blue, the big reason why I don't play it, and 2 generic, 5 mana, flash. Creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield have flash, which is enabling the entire flash concept for you that you need with Necropotence, but also each opponent can't cast spells only anytime he or she could cast a sorcery, giving you that Grand Abolisher effect as well. So if you have Teferi, Mage of something in play, if you're just casting Necropotence, your chance of winning here is huge. Now, you could say that Sisay can find this, but for Sisay to find this specific legendary blue creature, she has to be a 6/6. It can happen, but it's more in the later stage of the game. This is something you're usually tutoring for with a normal Demonic Tutor and then casting in instant speed. So this is the deck list. Link in the description below of the video to my Sisay Necro build. Now, this deck actually contains 99 cards, as you can see in the main deck, 99, and 5 cards in the sideboard. The reason for that is that Necrodominance hasn't been added to Mox Field in the current making of this video. Once it is going to be added and we will go up to 100 cards. Now this deck is going to be playing both Necropotence and Necrodominance, because I can tutor for Necrodominance, but if I accidentally draw into either of the two, I can just cast them from my hand. This is increasing consistency and capacity of just making sure that I get that Necropotence victory concept. So we are more or less creating two different combo concepts, you could say. So we have, once again, Emil the Blessed, together with Dockside Extortionist, Derevi, and Gaia's Cradle. That is something of the usual thing Sisay ends the game with. I also, once again, like I said, play Autoleaf Caller. I don't play the really expensive Teferi, I play the cheaper Planeswalker version instead. And of course I got a Soul's Cauldron that I view as an auto-include, as well as Born Upon the Wind and Final Fortune. I'm also adding Invigorate. Invigorate is a instant if you control a forest, which you naturally can do, and you may then give an opponent free life to cast it without paying its mana cost. So you usually pay 3 mana for it, but in this case no mana whatsoever, and Sisay becomes a 6/6 from this. And from that she could actually theoretically find that Teferi that I mentioned, that was a 5 CMC cost, but you can find the Necrodominance as well. So all you need is like an Sisay in play, 5 mana available, Invigorate in your hand, and boom, you have your Necropotence, or sorry, Necrodominance. Now I am playing 10 artifacts and on Mox Opal, which is not guaranteed that you're going to have a Mox Opal activated or alive. But once you've cast or paid an enormous amount of life into your Necropotence or a Necrodominance, and you cast your Born Upon the Wind, you're usually going to get your Chrome Mox, your Mana Crypt, Lotus Petal, Mox Diamond, and Mox Opal into your hand from that big dig, making this active. However, if we scroll up and look at some of the creatures here, Ragavan is creating treasures, Lofo is creating treasures, Dockside is creating treasures, which means that there are more artifacts in the deck even though you don't see them. And yeah, Smothering Tide as well. I'm also adding Vraska's Joins Up, a 2 CMC legendary enchantment. That will also boost Sisay's power, by the way. With Vraska Joins Up, Sisay will be a 4/4, so Sisay can activate and find Necrodominance. But as you can see here, we have a whole bunch of legendaries inside this deck. Also a lot of really cheap legendaries like Tiny Bones the Pickpocket. I kinda like this guy. There's a lot of Mystic Remoras and Rhystic Studies and Soul Rings and things that will be destroyed, and Tiny Bones can collect them. We also have Ragavan. Lofo is a really cheap early legendary that you can get into play. Laviniasaurus Renegade, Kinnan. Ertai will sometimes come into play. Flying Derevi is a legendary. Sisay herself is a legendary. So there's a few triggers that you can achieve from Vraska Joins Up. Oh yeah, Esper Sentinel is also an artifact together with the Mox Opal, by the way. We have Ranger Captain of Eos that can tutor for Esper Sentinel, it can tutor for Ragavan and find Tiny Bones, and well sure, Deathrite Shaman as well. It's a good card, it's anti-graveyard if you feel that you need that, but also it can gain life that you can use to pump more power into your Necrodominance and Necropotence. I would like to mention that suddenly we're on this game plan where our life matters, so there's a chance that our opponents are going to be attacking us quite a lot. This is why Deathrite Shaman could be good to make sure that you're climbing up or staying healthy. And by the way, if you're suddenly a little bit too low, then you can pivot, I would like to say, into the typical Sisay game plan instead, where your life doesn't really matter. But also, Vraska Joins Up will give all of your creatures Death Touch. So if someone is like, I'm gonna attack you, Sisay player over there, you can just say, sure, go ahead. And you find Vraska Joins Up, and you give everything Death Touch, and you block with this Elves of the Deep Shadow or this Avacyn's Pilgrim. That gains Death Touch from the Vraska's Joins Up. And if people know or believe that you have Vraska Joins Up inside your decklist, and Sisay is a free or something of the sort, then they might dislike attacking you, because you can just trade with your silly little mana dorks. We also have Rocco that can usually, or most of the cases, find Dockside Extortionist. I really like this tutor actually, because most of the counterspells, we can actually scroll down and take a look at the specific counterspells. Force of Negation can't counter a creature, Swan Song can't counter a creature, Fierce Guardianship, counter target non-creature spell. Most of the counter spells these days, they're still like Force of Will, Pact of Negation, and Mindbreak Trap. Now, Mindbreak Trap isn't actually going to work against Rocco, because usually that will be the only spell you've casted, so Mindbreak Trap won't work either. But it's a very few counter spells that actually stops a creature these days. And that means that you're usually going to get your Rocco to resolve, finding your Dockside Extortionist, but also making Sisay into a 5/5. That means that you can naturally find Emile de Bless straight afterwards. I have one more really cool combo that I would like to mention, and that's Marlin of the Morn Song together with Opposition Agent. Now, this is not something that actually wins the match, but it's something that wins the match eventually. So, players can't draw cards, okay. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player loses 3 life, search his or her library for a card and put it on top of his library, then shuffle his or her library. It's basically giving every player a Vamp Tutor at the start of their turn. Now, with Sisay, you can find that thing in instant speed in your last opponent's end step. You go to your turn, and you benefit from the search effect, searching up Opposition Agent. You cast the creature, and now your opponents can't search the library. Now, this means that they are going to slowly lose 3 life at the start of their turn, while you get to tutor their decks, look at their hand, and find whatever you want that you're collecting. So you're vamp tutoring your opponent's libraries while they're dying. They can't search, they can't draw cards, and you're kinda locking them out of the game. There are ways to actually get through this, of course. But every single time I've been successful in getting this into play, I've usually won the game. And Sisay only needs to be a 4/4 to be able to find this. Now, I would like to mention that you can either find Necropotence or Marlin of the Morning Song. It kind of depends on how you're feeling. If you're expecting that there's going to be a lot of spot removals in play, then it might be better to go for the Necrodominance. But if you feel like, oh, well, look, my opponents are not really playing spot removal, you can get that information if there's a key creature in play that everyone is sitting like, we need to kill that creature over there, but they can't, then you're probably safe in putting this Marlin of the Morn Song into play and locking them with the Opposition Agent combination. But I would highly like to emphasize that construction are taking place and it's not really a finished product. I am going to be playtesting this quite a lot in some of my games on my other cEDH TV gameplay YouTube channel. Experimenting and tweaking with the recipe to make sure that Necropotence hits the mark. As an example, I've added Elvish Spirit Guide and Simian Spirit Guide as creatures that will both also increase Gaia's Cradle count if I need to, but also be rituals in the Necrodominance Necropotence concept. But I have a big feeling that a lot of things could change. I'm not certain about Invigorate. It might go into the sideboard or the maybe board. I might need to increase the amount of artifacts, and I might need to add a few rituals potentially as well. We will see over time how this deck is developing. But I have super high hopes for this. I think that this card is going to be a more or less, maybe not auto-include, but it's going to be very prevalent inside Sisay builds. I guess we should mention that it's also going to upgrade all the other Necropotence decks that aren't playing Sisay, that are playing Necropotence, having a weaker secondary version of Necropotence. I honestly really like it, and I think this is gonna boost Sisay's power quite a lot. In any case, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.